Thank you, Jamie Foxx. Thank you, Julianne Moore. Thank you, Andra Day, and all of, gosh, they were great. Thank you, Katy Perry, who's about to come out. And there are lots of our friends in the audience who are no strangers here. I want to especially thank Neil Patrick Harris, who's been a great supporter of Hillary's. Thank you. I had about everything I needed to say in that little film. And the truth is, I have to bring Hillary out, and the two of us have to take enough time so that Katie's stage can be set. But there's one or two things I would like to say. First of all, in various ways, over the last couple of months, as Hillary's campaign has gelled and started to rise, I see little snippets of people writing articles on the internet or making public comments that show that she's finally breaking through, that people actually do get her. I saw this remarkable story by a woman who said, you know, I didn't support Hillary in 2008. I didn't even like her. I was glad when she agreed to be Secretary of State, and I sort of softened up. But I never really was enthusiastic until I read her emails. And the woman said, how anybody could have been so slandered over those, I don't know, but I actually read more than 1,000 of them, and it made me appreciate how really good she is as a human being as well as a public servant. President Obama's former speechwriter, John Favreau, wrote a very interesting piece saying, you know, I said some really unkind things about her in 2008, and then I did a pretty ham-handed thing, posing with one of those cutout dolls, and I was embarrassed until she laughed about it and told me not to worry. And I noticed when she came to the White House, she was often alone, stopped and spoke to everybody, especially the youngest people here, and then was always the best prepared person in every room. We really do need her, and in some ways, the choices we face today are perhaps more momentous than they were 8 years ago, when we all knew how the election was going to come out. We just didn't know what was going to happen afterward. Now we do, and after 8 years of pitched battles, we have to send a clear message to the country that we want to rise together, we want to live together, we want to govern together, and that's the only way we can win the battle for the hearts and minds of people around the world for freedom and democracy. And so, here's what I would like to say. One more word about Elton, because it's relevant to this. Chelsea talked about his foundation. It's been a great honor for us to work with this foundation in several countries in Africa, and I can tell you they do unbelievable work. But in some of the countries where we work, where there are virtually no roads, and people pass each other on foot on mountain trails, the typical greeting is, hello, good morning, how are you? But the answer is different than it would be in our culture. The answer translated into English is, I see you. Think about that. Think about what it means. Think about what it means in terms of the dignity you confer on the person you see. Think about all the people that spend their days laboring away in the back of this stage, down underneath, at the restaurant some of you will visit since we didn't feed you tonight. Think what it means for people who feel they are never seen to be seen. The thing I noticed when I first met Hillary, 45 years ago this month, was that she was interested in politics, but she wasn't particularly political. That is, she didn't just think about civil rights and the war in Vietnam, which we were all interested in. She thought about the people who might not come home, or the people who would come home injured for life. She thought about the children who would never get a good education. She saw people behind policies and politics, and she still does. From the minute I met her 45 years ago until last night when we talked about her wonderful victory, I was always struck about how personal all these issues are to her. The most moving ad she's had in the campaign, I think you saw a snippet of it, was not produced at all. It was just at a meeting where a little child who's a dreamer asked if her parents were going to be sent home, if she was going to be thrown out of school. And Hillary brought her up and hugged her, and she said, "I tell you what, you let me worry about that. Go back and be a good student, and we'll go forward together." That's the way she thinks about these things. In our family, and if you ask Chelsea this sometime when nobody's around, she'll give exactly the same answer. We raised her on this, and we live by it. All that matters when you finish your public service, whether you're in office or out, are three things. Are people better off when you quit than when you started? The children and young people have a brighter future. And are we coming together instead of being torn apart? If you can say yes to those things, all the rest is background music. That means now, at a time when we need a strong commander-in-chief who understands, yes, we need a mobile, strong military. Yes, we need a very tough diplomacy, but we also have to make a world with more partners and fewer adversaries, because no matter what anybody says about walls, most of the world's borders look more like nets, and the big battles are being fought inside the brains of billions of people over the internet. And so you can't really be president at home unless you're president as commander-in-chief. You have to do both in a way that allows us all to rise. In all these years, from the time I met her until last night, when she got home way late, I love it that for the first time in our lives, I fall asleep before she does. I've always thought she was the most gifted change maker I'd ever known. She had this unusual ability to empower other people, to make them imagine that they could make tomorrow better than today. This unusual ability to look at complicated subjects and immediately know what you could as well as what you couldn't do, and go for what you could do, and do as much as you could. She has been faithful to her little girl's upbringing in the Methodist Church and John Wesley's admonition to do all the good she could to all the people she could for as long as she could in any way that she could. But if you're president, you have to do that to lift other people, to empower other people. And I can tell you, I've done this a long time. And there are some days when I wish that we hadn't been married for 40 years, because then if I showed up and said this, maybe more people would believe me. But I know something about this job and what it's like to govern in storm and sunshine, on the great days, the bad days, and all the days in between. You really do need somebody who's a change maker, who makes the most of every day, and who sees people not policies, not politics, not problems, but through it all sees the people. That's what makes for a real change maker. So this has been a fun campaign for me because I never have to say anything I don't believe. I really just, and I think I'm a little, I mean, you saw our daughter up here tonight carrying our second grandchild. We got to have a FaceTime with her today over the internet. And my granddaughter is already ordering us around. It's hard for me to be as mad as those guys were in that debate the other night. I thought they were going to come to blows. But I am concerned about the real challenges we faced, about the implications of what happens to the Supreme Court. We can't have an inclusive economy and reduce inequality and all rise economically. We can't have an inclusive society and all live together on equal, respectful terms unless we can have an inclusive governing system, which means we can't restrict the right to vote. We can't restrict other human rights. We have to broaden them. In that context, and I can tell you, in that context, you want a president who will make sure at least once a week people come and hand her letters from just Americans who are writing, talking about what's happening in our lives, asking for specific help, talking about how what's going on in Washington looks out in the country, who will celebrate big legislative victories with the pictures of real people, with their dreams and hopes and fears and problems and promise carrying around in her heart every day. That's what makes for a great change maker. And I can honestly say that I've known a lot of pretty good change makers. She's the best I've ever known. And America needs it now. We need that. We need to grow together, we need to live together, we need to govern together, we need to present the right face to the rest of the world to keep us safe and to build a world with more partners and fewer enemies. We don't need to blame big categories of people. We're making a mistake, those people who think we should demonize all Muslims. We're making a mistake, people who think we should demonize all immigrants. We got to do this together. This is the most incredible country on earth. We're so diverse, we got every asset, we got every gift. What we don't have is a very good habit of listening to each other, and ability to get off our high horse, get off the dime, and get the show on the road. I can tell you, if there's one person on the face of the earth, based on the fact that everything she did in the White House, as a senator and as Secretary of State, she managed to get a fair amount of Republican as well as Democrat support for her. If there is one person who can get the show on the road, it's Hillary, and I want you to stay with her all the way through, nominate her, and elect her. Let's bring her up and thank you.
And co-sponsors, everyone who made this possible, and particularly the amazing people who have given up their time and talent Jamie Foxx, thank you so much. Andra Day, thank you. Julianne Moore, thank you. Elton John, just so grateful to you for not only being here, but what you do every day. And we're about to have such an amazing treat, which I will introduce in literally a minute. I just want to thank you for backing this campaign. You know, I'm running for president to all the barriers that stand in the way of America living up to its potential and of every American living up to his or hers. And the outpouring of support that you and millions of Americans across our country have given to this campaign just really reinforces to me how important it is that we talk about what we will do together, that we talk about building each other up. You know, America has always been great. We do not have to make it great. What we have to do is we have to make America whole, and that means working with one another. I'm proud that we've laid out issues and policies, but I'm especially pleased that we've had so many people who've been willing to share their stories with me and with the campaign. Stories about the obstacles they've overcome, the hurdles that they have gotten over, because that resilience, that grit, is really at the core of who we are as Americans. And I can't wait to continue this campaign in the weeks ahead as we travel across the country, not only talking about what we want to do, the many, many opportunities we have to work together, but also continuing to hear your stories. That just keeps me going. It's so invigorating because I know that together we will build the future that all of us deserve and that we particularly want to see for our children and, yes, our grandchildren. So thank you for supporting us. And now I am so excited to introduce the one and only Katy Perry.